Hey everyone, welcome to our Fangirl Fridays special, where we talk about all things nerdy.
From anime to movies to music galore, we're here to share our thoughts, opinions, and most of all, share our love and passion for all things nerdy.
We hope you enjoy the show. All right, hey everyone, and welcome to our first Fangirl Fridays, where we are going to talk about nerdy-ish and share our love with it with you, because why not? We want to share, accept it. So that's why the topic of today's episode is going to be Blerds. And I'm pretty sure that most of you probably don't know what a blurred is. You're probably just sitting there like, what the heck is a blurred? Like, what are these women talking about? Essentially, a blurred is, my dear Callie, do you want to give them the official definition? Because make it sound all professional-ish.
Well, blurred is the combination of the words black and nerd. I mean, that's the long and short of it. It's just a term that's used to describe a black person that is interested in nerd culture. A very specific term that can only be used by one group, and when you know it, you know it.
But then that gives question as to what is the definition of a nerd, because so many people have so many different types of definitions. What would you say is the definition of a nerd? Is there just one type of nerd, or are there multiple kinds of nerds?
I would say that the nerd umbrella has more to do with the vast knowledge of topics within the realm of sci-fi and horror, and anime. Basically, it's the amount of knowledge you have within a certain topic, particularly those that are considered, I guess, more academic in its own realm. A geek, on the other hand, is a person that is more involved in the performance aspect of these, I guess, very nuanced selection. So, for example, I would say that a Star Wars nerd is someone who is well versed in the canon lore of Star Wars and can recite exactly what type of lightsaber dueling style works well with what character and the purpose of each lightsaber blade color. Where a geek would most likely be a person who cosplays as a particular Star Wars character or, does LARPing on the weekend. They're more on the hands-on aspect within that community. I hope that sums it up a little bit.
Oh, girl, you taught me some things too. Like to have it laid out so plainly of how to differentiate the geek versus the nerd like that is very, very helpful. Because many times, even I noticed with myself, you just kind of like mesh them together. It's like, oh, a nerd's a nerd, but you don't really look into like what actually differentiates the term nerd and geek, because they're interchangeably used a lot of the time. So it's like, how do you differentiate? So that was really, really helpful for myself as well. But would you classify yourself as a nerd or a geek?
I would say I float between the two. It depends on the topic. So, as I mentioned before with Star Wars, I would say I'm more of a geek in Star Wars culture only because I'm not well versed in the lore. I'm not on top of the changes within the story and canon interactions. I cosplay as various characters and I can emulate them very closely. So I would say I'm more of a geek in most cases, but when you catch me on my nerdy side, that's like Avatar Last Airbender. I'm a nerd in that regard. I can tell you everything about the different nations. I can tell you which avatar appears in the lineup of past lives. Like I float. I float. What about you, Cleo?
Okay, girl, I see you with your nerddom with Avatar.
Love
Like, Avatar is the ish. We can have a whole episode about how great Avatar, that last Airbender, is. And if y'all haven't seen it, go watch it. It's on Netflix. No, there's no explanation needed. Just go.
it.
Um, but, But I'm similar to you in terms of floating between geek and nerd, because back in the day, I attempted cosplay. I used to have like the katana swords, and I was just so immersed in um, the anime geekdom, but also nerddom, because I would just analyze everything and be like, oh my
Mhm.
God, about like Sailor Moon and about the transformations and about the history and about this. Or what was it? Inuyasha. I was like, oh my God, what about this? Like there were many things that I would just like research and try and share the fun facts that nobody really cared about. But as I got older, it's interesting because I was kind of bullied out of my geekdom and nerddom,
Mm.
by previous romantic partners, by toxic friendships. It was always like, ew, you like that anime stuff? Why are you trying to be Asian? Or,
Mm.
ew, you like that? You're such a nerd. That's so stupid. Or people would take my shit and throw it away.
Ugh.
So a lot of my merch would be like thrown away or stolen, or just it was a very harsh. So it got to the point, like at one point with a past partner, I would like hide so I can just watch anime without being
Mhm.
bullied, without being bothered. So getting older, I almost became embarrassed and shamed about liking nerdy things, especially being a Black woman within the Black community. Was always like, that's not Black. You're not really Black. You're just trying to be Asian. You're just trying to
Mhm.
be white, liking that stuff. But you're Black, so you shouldn't be liking that stuff. So it was almost like we were trained to kind of be shamed to be
Mhm.
liking these types of things because it was just associated with white people or Asians. And I'm just like, nah, fam, I like this because I like it, not because of a particular ethnicity.
Mhm.
So I do tend, now that I'm getting back into it, I was like, you know what, screw y'all, I don't care, I'm gonna like it anyway. Y'all gonna judge me, I might as well give you something to judge about.
Mhm.
Um, so I flirt, float between the geekdom and the nerddom. I'm going into nerddom when it comes to Avatar as well because I'm obsessed. And with some other anime, I'm going and starting to go into the nerddom and geekdom. I desperately want to get back into cosplay, but being where I am, cosplay is not a thing. But I might just do it anyway. We'll find out.
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine that. Like cosplay not being the thing because it's becomes the culture has blown up so much, and that kind of is a perfect segue into our next section about love and hate within the blurred community.
Yes.
Cosplay is now considered to be mainstream.
Ooh.
So is the enjoyment of Marvel and DC and anime and video games and everything that goes along with these artistic representations of fantastical beings and creatures within imaginary worlds. I remember back in high school, just as you mentioned, bullying ran rampant with Black children in particular because, again, you're not supposed to like these things because if that's white. You're not white, so why are you doing this? Or you're not Asian, so why are you doing this? You need to stay in your lane, kind of thing. And it's disheartening because there's so many things you can learn from other people just by exploring these cultural differences that appear in various storytelling, like mnemonics. It's really weird. Like, I remember when Dragon Ball Z was a big part of the culture for a bit because of like Toonami, and people were so into it, particularly boys. Boys loved it. They thought it was the greatest thing ever because there was screaming, there was muscles, there was power ups, there was fighting. It was just, it was crazy. And it's like, oh my God, did you see that episode? Oh, he went Super Saiyan. He went Super Saiyan. Everybody lost their mind. But it wasn't common for girls to enjoy Dragon Ball Z because that wasn't considered a girls' show. Girls like Sailor Moon. Girls didn't
Yup.
like Dragon Ball Z because what was it? What was there in it for us? It was screaming,
Mm.
fighting.
Oh yeah. Like that's so funny that you mentioned that. It's like it's very true that like that, which also kind of ties into the fact of how just being a woman in general and in their community, it's like it's always an interrogation, like when we try and tell people, oh, we're a nerd, like I am a nerd, I like anime and I like X, Y, and Z, usually Many times when you talk to a male who's also a nerd, it's like, oh, like it's not possible for you to be a nerd. Like women can't be nerds. Or, oh, you like anime? Well, what anime do you like? And you can't say Sailor Moon because that doesn't really make you a nerd. That doesn't really mean you like anime. If you like Sailor Moon, that's whatever. And just the bias is very interesting to me because I'm like, I guess it just ties into any type of hatred in a way. It's like, for example, even with just with racism, I was like, we're all minorities, but then a lot of the minorities hate each other. Like, bro, like this doesn't make sense. Stop. So it's strange. So like even within the nerd communities, like we're already kind of outcasted by the quote unquote normal society. So why is it that we're having this hate amongst each other instead of a community of like, okay, well, we like this alternative lifestyle in the way. Why can't we be supportive of each other in that? But it still breaks into a male versus female type thing or a race type thing, especially when it comes to cosplay. Like, I'm sure you're more familiar with that than I. But from the posts I've been seeing and the articles that I've read, it's especially when it comes to cosplay, there's just so much hate when it comes to someone trying to do a great cosplay of a character that doesn't match their ethnicity, but specifically for women of color and people of color trying to cosplay. Like, you know more about that. So would you like to share like either your experiences or things that you've seen in terms of cosplay and people of color in the community?
So interestingly enough, I think 2 years ago, in 2019, I would say, was the first time I attended a convention called BlerdCon. It's a Black nerd convention, and it takes place in July for a weekend. And to me, that was the first time I'd ever felt accepted and embraced by my community. It was a place where people of color could be anything they wanted. Any cosplay you chose had a black twist to it. Um, and it was like going to a cookout where you see all of your family for the first time in a long time, and you bond with them and you just share a mutual enjoyment of these different genres. That was the first time I'd ever felt truly welcome in the cosplay community, particularly as a Black woman portraying a fantasy character. Now, I have seen and experienced people posting their photos from BlerdCon, either their personal photos or with the help of a photographer, and other communities explode. So, for example, if you got the character Chun-Li from Street Fighter, the video game series, Chun-Li is an Asian character, and she's portrayed that way on purpose because that was her character design. When a Black woman cosplays as Chun-Li, the backlash is phenomenal because people say Chun-Li's Asian. But then you see white women who cosplay as Chun-Li, and it's like the greatest thing ever. So people want the skin tone to be within the same genre, and that's a very purist mentality, is that that character that's being portrayed has to look exactly as you've seen it portrayed 1,000 times over. Black people tend to put their own spin on it without changing their skin color for accuracy, and that's another issue within the community, is blackface with international cosplayers mostly, if it's a character of color. So, for example, the character Yorichi from the anime series Bleach, she is portrayed as a Black woman in the series, and most people who know her know that she's Black. Black women cosplay her all the time, but then when you have someone of another ethnicity cosplaying her, sometimes they paint their skin for accuracy to look like Yorichi. And I have a big problem with that because if you need to alter your skin tone to portray a character, that means you're not a good cosplayer. People know who the person is by very specific characteristics. We all know who Mario is from from the Mario video game series. We know that he's a short Italian plumber with a mustache, overalls, red shirt, and he says, "It's a me, Mario." We know who that is. You don't need to be, pale skinned in order for us to know that it's Mario because he has iconic features that immediately give him away. If you need to paint your skin for accuracy, then you're not a good cosplayer, because we should know who you are by the skill and detail that you put into it to portray a well-known character. And unfortunately, Black women get the backlash of that, because if they don't do that for accuracy, the fires of heck engulf them by the community and saying, like, that character isn't that color, so you can't do that. It's not right. It's wrong. That character is not Black. And it's kind of like, so what? It's the character. You know who it is, right? Okay, we're done here. So that's my experience in it. I haven't been victimized personally because I pick my characters that go very closely with my skin tone, so I can avoid that issue. But if I'm bold enough at some point, I'm going to step across the line. I'm just not there yet.
I can like that's crazy, and it makes me laugh because, like you were saying, how when a white person cosplays any character of any race, people are perfectly okay with it, no matter if it's a Black character and this white person cosplaying them, or if it's an Asian character and the white person's cosplaying them. People are like, "Oh my God, they're so beautiful and they're amazing." But the moment a person of color tries to do that cosplay, it's all hell breaks loose, like you said. And then that even ties into the Little Mermaid issue when that thing was happening, when all of a sudden, what's her name? What was her name? Haley? Chloe?
Yeah,
What's it?
Haley and Chloe are the singing group. They're sisters. I think it was
Yes.
Chloe that was selected to play the Little Mermaid in a live action reboot.
Yes.
Yeah.
But then people like was like, "Oh my God, Little Mermaid's not Black. She can't do that," and blah blah blah. And they're like, scientifically, they can't be Black and they can't do this and da 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 da. It doesn't make sense that you're trying to sorry that I'm getting heated thinking about it, because people are like, "Oh, scientifically." Listen, it's a mermaid and it's not real. What are you talking about? Scientifically, a mermaid can't be Black. What is wrong with you? Like, it's a fictional character. We can change what they look like. You do not own the character. The person is not real. Like, it doesn't make sense. There's artistic and creative freedom. Why can't you accept it? If you don't like it, that's fine, but you don't have to bring somebody else down because of your dislike. Just keep that crap to yourself. And even recently, I saw a cosplay for Legend of Korra. So for those of you, Legend of Korra is pretty much kind of like the sequel, not sequel, but like the continuation of the original Avatar: The Last Airbender. It happens in the future after the shenanigans of the first original series. And the main character is Korra. And she's a character of color. She's darker skin tone. And this cosplayer, she was also a woman of color cosplaying her, but she was a plus size cosplayer. And her cosplay was gorgeous. Like, she had the outfit on point, she had like a professional photo done, her pose was on point, everything was beautiful. And yet you still have these people in the comments throwing shade at her because, oh, she's too quote unquote fat to be playing that character. Or that's a whole nother podcast about, like, ties into the body image, it ties into fat phobia. That's a whole nother conversation. But they hate, like, of course there are positive ones as well, but at the same time, it's like, why are people so dissatisfied with their own lives that they feel a need to take time out of their day to try and put someone else down for their own benefit? So if the shoe fits, the shoe fits. You need to take a look at yourself in the mirror. Like, if you don't want someone saying that stuff to you, why are you saying it to somebody else? That just shows there's something going on with you and you need to get something fixed, because it's disrespectful, that's hate, and it's ugly. It's not a good look. So there's that. There's that. So I do like commend you for being brave enough to even be in the cosplay community when it's such like when it's supposed to be such an uplifting community, and then you have the moment you step out of your own circle, it's like all like the pandemonium is let loose. So kudos to you for even venturing into that. Like, what brought you to wanting to cosplay, like, and actually step into that role more?
So, funny thing that you mentioned Korra. Uh, Back when Korra was a very prominent character in my life at the time, um, again, as you mentioned before, Korra is portrayed as a person of color with darker skin. She was a very physical and domineering force, not only through her avatar gifted abilities, but her she was a prodigy in her martial arts skills. She was physically strong and developed her mental strength. She was very spunky and outspoken. And I highly resonated with that character because I believed her to represent me on screen when there weren't too many characters at the time that I felt that I could be represented by. And as a result of that, I was going through a very difficult time in my life, and I knew that I needed a change. I needed a creative outlet to help feel stronger in myself. I didn't feel like Callie was not strong at that time. Callie did not feel like a strong person. And so I thought maybe if I took a walk in someone else's shoes for a time, I could embody their strength and hopefully awaken my own. And so I put together my first cosplay, which was Korra from The Legend of Korra. And the feeling of just that sense of power of embodying that character and bringing her to life gave me a new sense of purpose and fulfillment. I'm like, I need to be able to do this correctly. I need to do it right. And I need to make sure that it looks good. My attention to detail was sparked, and now I had a creative project to focus on other than the pain I was dealing with at the time. And it worked. I felt so much better when I took that costume off at the end of the convention day. I felt like a whole new person and I felt like I could do anything. So moving forward, I started selecting characters to help bring to life. Because one of the most gratifying feelings to me as a cosplayer is when other people recognize the character that you're portraying and they want to take pictures with you. You feel like a celebrity during that time because you're kind of like, I am this person today. Of course you can. Come on, let's take photos. And you make a lot of friends that way too. So it's just, it was a really, uh, I started cosplaying at a very vulnerable time in my life, and it helped to give me the strength that I needed to get through that time, and it inspired me to be more creative. And yeah, I to this day love working on cosplay for that reason.
And I think that's one of the things, like, thank you for sharing like such a personal experience. I think that's one of the things that people have a misconception of in terms of cosplay. Many people don't take the time to want to actually understand. It's like, oh, these people are weird. They're dressing up. They're running around like Naruto. Like don't get. I mean, like when you get to the point of like, remember when they were trying to do the Area 51 raid, running like Naruto and stuff.
Ninja run.
I That happened while I was here in Korea, and I just started looking. I was like, y'all, what are you doing? Like, like every community, let me disclaim this, every community has a select few who just, I'm like, okay, you do you.
Yeah,
But
they do a bit much, but they're doing them. It's good.
they're doing them. Kudos to you. But in terms of cosplay, people just like, oh well, they're just trying to dress up as these characters. Is so weird. But I'm like, but every year at Halloween you dress up as these other characters, so what makes it so different? Just because it's not on a publicly made holiday, it's
Mm-hmm.
considered strange.
Yeah.
Like, y'all do this on Halloween, you do this on St. Patty's Day when you dress up like a leprechaun to try and get drunk, like,
Mm-hmm.
or you dress as Cupid on February 14th, or you dress as like the American flag on 4th of July.
Which is
um
disrespectful, by the way. It's in the
exactly.
Constitution. We're not supposed to use the flag for commercial purposes. Yet, the American flag is on many commercial purposes. We're not really supposed to salute the flag either because why? But anyway, please continue.
And yeah, for those of you who have them American flag undies, that's disrespectful.
Very disrespectful.
um but that's what's just so funny. It's like kind of like that double standard. There's a double standard in everything, but when people actually take a step back, I'm like, listen, cosplay is not different from how you behave on these extra holidays. You know, like when you dress up like Santa for Christmas, or like a reindeer for Christmas, or a pumpkin, you know, it's the same thing, except for I feel that I haven't ventured into cosplay more yet, but at some point I will. It it helps you pick a cosplay, correct me if I'm wrong, dependent upon the character that means the most to you. That way you can connect to its spirit. That way it just, this person or this being had such a strong impact on you that you felt the need to spend hours or spend a lot of money on trying to have a costume to depict this character. It has a completely different level of meaning, I think, in comparison to just throwing reindeer ears on during Christmas, you know. um or just dressing up with like a leprechaun beard so you can drink beer and get trash for a weekend. So I feel like cosplay has such a stronger and deeper meaning to it that many people they don't recognize it. And it's a shame, because I feel like I wish that more people can be more exposed to that and actually get to learn it. Because I remember when I went to the first convention back in high school, there was a Tandoku Con in Philadelphia. It was like a 1 year thing. I was so sad. But I went there, and I remember I made a makeshift cosplay for myself and my best friend. And I just had an extra white t-shirt, an oversized t-shirt, and I used Sharpie to make the cosplay. And it was Ray from Beyblade. And I just remember coloring the button. Yeah, it was that. I used a yellow Sharpie at the bottom and a blue Sharpie to make the little lapels. And it was a really makeshift thing. And we had I had an old pair of red gloves I cut the fingers out of to make his gloves. And we used like a paint to do the yin yang symbol on the back, and like make an old headband. And it was really funny. And then for my Kai costume, I just remember cutting like different fabrics, and it was the worst costume ever, but it was still so funny, because when we got there at one point, we ran into another Kai and a Kenny and a Max, I think. So there was, mind you, these are the characters of the Beyblade show, if you haven't seen it. And so we wound up all hanging out. It's like, yo, my other people. And it's so strange, the community of people that you can meet at these conventions just from being a character. Because you can see like another character, like, oh, Neji. You don't even know people's names half the time. You only
Nope.
know like their cosplay name. Like, yo, it's Neji. Or hey, yo, Naruto, how you doing? Or hey, blah 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 blah. It was problematic. One person was like dressed as Alucard and just kept glomping people without permission. Then that's a different story.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
whole different
yeah, that's a whole nother conversation about being in
consent.
costume and people touching you without permission. Anyway,
Yes.
but being a blurred in particular, when being a person of color in the nerd community is just so complex, because on an everyday, day-to-day life, we are oppressed. We have so many things against us, so many ways where we have to kind of control ourselves. We have to code switch all the time. We have to behave in a way that's quote unquote non-threatening, because people can't see that our normal behavior is not threatening. So we have to overcompensate to perceive like we're not threatening. And it's just, it's sad. We have to walk on eggshells pretty much every day of our life to dispel these things. And then when it comes to being a blurred, it just adds to like, well, no, you're a Black person, so you're just a scary person. You can't be soft and like anime, or you can't possibly like this stuff because it doesn't fit your stereotype. You have to like the rap, you have to like the gangster stuff. You can't, there's no way that you can like this. So it's a very difficult position to be in when you're ostracized from pretty much almost every type of community, you know, especially if you don't fit that mold. But once you do find that segment, like with you and BlerdCon, it's such a sense of like an exhale, a breath of relief, where it's like, I can finally be myself and
Yeah.
not have to worry about just being killed. You know, I can just relax. I can enjoy this environment. I can enjoy being around other people who like these nerdy things. Like, yeah, let's run like Naruto down the street. Blah! You know, so like it's it's just fascinating, and it's a very unique experience. It's just in terms of the blurred community, there's obviously things that need to be fixed, and we can go more into the politics of that later. But at the end of the day, being a person of color in the nerd community, what many people don't understand is it could basically be a difference between life and death for many people. And I'm not trying to be dramatic about it. I'm not trying to be extreme about it, but quite literally, it can be life and death. Because with the crazy things that are happening around the world that we see on the news every day, being a nerd is sometimes the only chance we get to relax, the only chance we get to see hope, the only chance we see to get inspiration, the motivation that we we have the strength inside us to keep pushing through, and it can inspire people to do things that otherwise they would never get the opportunity to be inspired to do, like the arts, or just putting their anger, putting their pain and their strife into something that's healthy.
Yep.
Instead of going out to the streets, instead of succumbing to the societal pressure to be put into the stereotypical box of what it's quote unquote supposed to be, to define us as Black people. So before I challenge you, who people who are listening to this, if you are one of those people who try to judge, who try to be like, well, you're a Black person, you can't like anime, or a Black woman, you can't like anime, like blah, 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 like being judgy about it, I challenge you to take a step back. Take a step back and listen and think about, what could this passion for animation or whatever bring to the person? What could this mean to them? Like, to make them so passionate about it, to go outside of their normal stereotype and encourage them. Like, what would make them love that so much? Why is it so meaningful? Ask them, why do you love this so much? Why do you love that character so much? Why is this so unique to you that you had to step out of the box to do that? And try to see it from their perspective. Immerse yourself in a sense, come to an understanding, and get to know them. If they say, hey, I like Inuyasha, why? Check out a couple episodes, talk to them, discuss. And even if it's not your cup of tea, at least you learn something new about someone else and you're able to empathize with that individual instead of judging them unnecessarily by things that could have potentially saved their life. So I challenge y'all, even if you're not a judgy person, to just take a step back and try something new. Try something that you would deem nerdy or geeky. Watch that Star Wars movie for the first time, or watch that episode of Sailor Moon, watch that episode of One Punch Man, and just take a chance to walk in someone else's shoes, because you never know what impact that can have on your life or those around you. So, yeah.
I think that's an excellent way to end our episode today, Cleo. And I think to top it all off, we're going to share a quote by John C. Maxwell. Enjoyment is an incredible energizer to the human spirit. Those are definitely words to live by.
100%. Those are beautiful, beautiful words. So with that, our dear listeners, we will see you next week. This is Cleo.
And this is Callie.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Hey everyone, Cleo here. Thank you for joining us for this week's episode. If you like what you heard, please remember to subscribe, like, and hit the little notification bell down below to stay in the loop for future episodes. And we would also love to hear from you down in the comments below. We look forward to catching you in the next episode. See you then. Goodbye!